All right, well, let's start really easy. Why don't you tell us what you're working on these days?
Yeah, these days I'm working on a business called FYI. It's at usefyi.com, and currently the sort of value proposition on the homepage is find your documents in 3 clicks or less. So we actually help you by connecting to now almost more than a dozen services such as G Suite, Dropbox, Airtable, Confluence, Box, Evernote, your computer, even OneDrive, and more to come, more coming like every month, and help you find your documents in 3 clicks or less. So we have a search, it's really powerful, but our goal is actually to help you find your documents without having to search. And so we've created an interface designed around how we've discovered people find their documents.
Awesome. And aside from that, you've got a couple of other projects on the go as well.
Yeah, I have a email newsletter that started as a personal newsletter called Product Habits. And it started as a personal newsletter, and then we rebranded it. My co-founder Marie and I, we rebranded it a few years ago. And we actually have been sharing everything we do in product development with everybody on the list. And they've been reacting to it in a positive way. So it actually helped us discover the opportunity for FYI. And build it out, and we've just been going after it. One thing that I really love doing is, in a way, I think I'm partially a historian of a lot of other businesses. So I've written a 20 or 30, somewhere in the 20 to 30 range of really detailed, lengthy write-ups about different software companies, and also even folks like Domino's Pizza. And just really talked about how these products have evolved, how the businesses have grown, and what comes next for them, in my opinion. And so that I put on Product Habits. We've posted some of it on the FYI blog now too. And I think for me, those are two of the things that I spend a lot of my energy on. And then I have a older business called CrazyEgg that's been around since 2005. So now you're talking almost 14 years. And we create heat maps for where people are clicking on a page. And that business has been self-funded. And in between these two sets of self-funded businesses and CrazyEgg back in the day, I started a company called KISSMetrics that I raised a bunch of money for. So yeah, that's my story. These days I work on a couple things more from the perspective of where I put my energy towards.
And then you also have startup chats. You've been doing a Stelly for a number
Yeah,
of years
can't
now.
forget that. So I think it's
A
been
couple
about
hundred episodes in, something
yeah
like that.
three plus years, and we've got 400 podcast episodes in. Yep.
Amazing. What's it been like working with a very different range of founders and collaborators? Like I've met Neil, he's got the shaved head and the very swaggy leather jacket look. And then I follow Marie on Instagram. She's more like yoga and like crystals and like salt of the earth, very different ends of the spectrum. And Stelly's somewhere in there as well, probably closer to Neil. What's it been like working with those range of characters as co-founders?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been really fun. I I like variety, and I think that that's a big part of it. I had to text Marie since it's on audio. I can say this. I had to text Marie what you just said, so that I get in trouble. I'm like, oh, so he just said Marie is like yoga crystals and salt of the earth based on her Instagram. Oh, I'm gonna get it.
Is that
Uh,
accurate?
yeah, it's accurate. She's like, who? Oh man, this is gonna be good.
So fun.
Anyway, so uh,
I know with my co-founders, as an example, like it's taken years to adapt to each other's styles and really understand how to really work tight with each other and not run into unproductive conflict. What's it been like for you adapting to those very different styles?
um, uh, yeah, I think things are always changing, and human beings change quite a bit more than we might all, want to admit. And she's like, "What's salt of the earth?" I'm like, "Oh, you haven't heard that saying? Okay." She's like, "I'm gonna Google it." I'm like, "Oh no, oh no, it's gonna be good." Oh my god!
There is.
All right, look what you did. Anyway, I think I it, it it isn't on other people to figure out how can I put this? I put the onus on myself as much as possible to figure out how to work with other people. And so, you know, if these people are different, she's sorry. She's like, damn, that's a compliment. She's like, from the Bible. Yeah, it's a huge compliment. I would say that like, it's on me to, you know, figure out how to work with these other people. I don't think it's on them. I can't have expectations of them changing, even though they do, and I can't have expectations um, of them at all. To be frank, all I can do is understand them as best as I can because I'm not them, and I do understand myself and continue to keep trying to understand myself better. And so, when it comes to interpersonal relationships, especially of the co-founder kind, I've just seen basically stages, and I can't say that I can map the stages. Like Marie and I were in one stage really early on, getting to know each other. Then we moved to another stage as we built some of our businesses and got really solid. And now we're in, I would call, a third stage where we're we've split out roles and responsibilities and are really focusing on separate things in the business. I think I did a good job of that with Neil, but I don't think we did a great job of it. And so I think in hindsight, I probably would have done a better job of roles and responsibilities and being more deliberate. I think we did do a good job though. It just wasn't, as coordinated, even if we were doing different things, as Marie and I are going to get to and already have started getting to once we decided we were going to do this. So, evolution would be my answer to how things need to work, how things work. And where you can go wrong, and a pitfall I would see is when you're not willing to accept the changes that are happening in the other person's life, whatever they may be, because that's going to cause their behavior to change.
Do you think that those evolution through the stages are easier between certain personality types? Like I've got two co-founders and they're both more similar to each other than I think I am to them. And they serve as a good foil to some of my characteristics. You know, I can be out there doing crazy things and chasing crazy ideas, very heat and bombish. Sometimes the both of them together, though, feels like too much balance on one side, too much yang to my yang. What's that been like for you, the evolution through the stages? Have you found that you work better with certain styles than others?
I think I'm more of the adaptable sort of mindset.
Okay.
And I look forward to adapting more than I look forward to a certain type of person on the other end, right? I think when it comes to the co-founder partnership that Marie and I have, it's on my end, it's out of a lot more consciousness of what I'm looking for in terms of not in a co-founder, but in any of my relationships in life. And a lot of it has to do with clear communication.
Yep.
And better understanding of boundaries, both personal and professional. And I think I'm still learning a lot of those kinds of things, period, whether it's with her or other folks. And it's been a journey, you know, a journey of more self-awareness and introspection and less so of anything to do with the other person. Like a lot of it is like, how do you react when other people say things, and like it just shouldn't matter. Like I think I just tweeted the other yesterday, like a reminder for everybody, like don't take things personally.
Yeah.
Even though I thought I didn't, I think I was so much over and over again, and like I don't want to anymore. I don't care if it shouldn't be my problem if someone says something or does something and they mean harm. That should have nothing to do with me. I shouldn't give a shit about or care about what someone else thinks of me. And I spent a lot of my life
I think that
caring a lot about that.
I know for me, like, I've become clear on a lot of these things as well as I've grown and aged. Do you think that the nature of the work that we do, like very tight, high value personal relationships with co-founders, which are very special and unique relationships. Do you think that helps accelerate some of the learnings on those values as opposed to people that may not get that depth of relationships outside of, you know, family and that kind of thing? Like we have almost like separate marriages in our co-founders times like multiple businesses over the years. Do you think that that's accelerated the clarity on those things, the learnings along that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are relationships that you end up having to highly value, um, and others. Yeah, it's a type of relationship that everybody highly values, and that you put a lot of effort into. And so relationships like that, like with your significant other or with a co-founder, are ones that teach you the most, and they teach you more about yourself than anything else if you're open to it. And so I think, yeah, it's definitely been really fruitful to understand, to have those kind of partnerships in the first place,
Hmm.
and then be able to grow them and evolve them over time.
Awesome. So FYI, product habits, startup chat, crazy egg, all kinds of things on the go. You're super, super active on Twitter as well. As scrolling through your feed yesterday and it took me like an hour just to get a couple months back. And of course your newsletter too. I mean, something I've always admired about you, and you and I have talked about this previously, is all of the balls that you're able to keep in the air at the same time. Sometimes I think about ideas and execution being on a continuum. You know, there's some people that are really good at coming up with ideas, but not great on executing on them. And then there's others that are really good at just execution alone, but sometimes get lost in the structure of it. They miss the forest. Do you agree with that continuum, and where do you fit into that model?
Uh, I like being able to zoom in and zoom out. So I break the model if you're going to use that kind of model. I really like to be able to zoom in and zoom out, and I feel like I can get all the way into the weeds and get my hands really dirty on most things. I can also basically go all the way really high up and look at the forest, or even further up and look at, you know, the earth, if you want to call it that. And I enjoy doing that.
So sort of being able to switch between that pie in the sky idea generation down to like, let's actually grind out like an 8 hour session on this and kick it forward.
Yep.
Have you honed that over time as well? Like
Um,
built that execution muscle?
yeah, it's just practice, right? On execution, practice on even being able to zoom out. I think zooming out tends to be a little bit of a harder thing for most people to grasp than zooming in. Uh, Zooming in is a lot more execution oriented.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think people have a hard time grasping some of those concepts for themselves, for sure. And I just try to practice on as many of these levels as I can, particularly the 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 process of zooming in and out. I think it's not just like the fact that, oh, you get your hands dirty, you get in the weeds or whatever, execution. It's also like all the way going back up and then being able to go up and down. Some people say they're good at, very few people say they're good at context switching. I want to be in the minority there, right? I want to be great at context switching. I don't just want to be, I think that's something I pride myself in, and want to always improve that skill in a way that I haven't really found, like, I found that to be counter to how most people think about the world. They think you should focus, and that, you know, it's hard to context switch and they can't do it and this and that. And I don't have those beliefs in myself. I don't want to believe those things, to be honest.
I think that context switching within the day, like actually switching from task to task and back and forth, I think most people think that that's challenging. Zooming out a bit and thinking just about focus in general, I mean, as you consider all of these different business initiatives that you have on the go, there's definitely a camp of people that say relentless focus is one of the most important ingredients, and without it, you won't be successful. Where does your worldview sit on that, especially with the number of things you have on the go? Like, Do you think that if your focus was narrower, that you'd be further along today?
Yeah, I think that I don't know. So the right answer is I don't know. It's not a bad question. I don't know. I don't know the alternative. So when you don't know the alternative and you're happy, is there a point in thinking about it? I'm not sure, right? So that's where I'll start. And then I think my approach has always been to focus on energy, not on time.
Tell me more about that.
Uh, uh, I keep hearing like when people say, "Oh, you're doing all these things. How do you have time for them?"
Yeah.
I, I don't. I
Question I
don't
asked
know.
you.
Huh?
I've asked you that exact question once before.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I I don't know how I have time for it. Like if I thought about it like that, I'd be like, oh crap, I don't have time for any of this shit, right? And I should focus and like whatever. And like, no, what do I have energy for? Like I didn't get on this call with you until I felt like I had energy for it,
Hmm.
right? I didn't know what that meant.
Yep.
It took me a while ago, and I sat on it. It's not like I didn't read it. It's not like I didn't know what was going on. It's not like I didn't know that you wanted me to get on this call. But now I have energy for it, and I feel like talking to you about it, right? About the topic you wanted to talk about, which I didn't know either, and it's different than I thought, but it doesn't matter to me. So I think for me, between context switching and doing that and being very good at doing that, like right now, if you started talking about your personal life or psychotherapy or some other crap, like I could switch gears in a split second, in a millisecond, and be like, okay, let's talk about that. No problem, right? And so I think it's like I like context switching, so that makes it so that if I were to be super focused and narrow, I might miss out on opportunities that have led me to where I am today on all these ideas and these things, right? I might not have met my co-founder. I might not have came up with some of the ideas I have. We as a team might be very different. And over time, I've been honing in on this, right? Where it's like everything I do, I tend to find a way that like I can justify the value of it for my life. I'm not sure if I was good at that in the past.
Hmm. What's the current ultimate goal? What's the end game that all these things are adding up to?
I don't think there is an end. I think there's no end goal. There's no end in mind. Just like there was no start in mind either.
Do you see yourself retiring one day?
I don't think so. I'm not really sure what that means either.
Something that someone gave me once was the concept of seasons of life. You know, how you
Uh-huh.
kind of go
Yeah.
through like different seasons where things change. Like a clear one is when you switch into family mode, at least for me as I conceptualize it, you know, moving
Yeah.
away from where I am today, early 30s, no family, to like next season, probably being family oriented. How do you think about seasons of life? And like, if there's no retirement, do you envision at least different seasons in the future where maybe like you don't have 10 things on the go and you're focused maybe more on giving back or like, I don't know what, like, what does that look like for you?
I can only imagine doing more.
More of the same that you're doing today?
Not necessarily the same, but I can only just see myself doing more. I don't see myself doing less. And that's probably going to come in different forms over time. But I live my life and I walk around the world in a way where like I want to be, I want to know, obviously, and I think I have a solid idea of like um, what I want to accomplish, which is more of the same as of right now. But I also have a lot of flexibility as to how. I also have a lot of flexibility as to being open to whatever shows up. And I feel like that's important to me.
Do you think the nature of that more changes over time? Like maybe a shift to legacy away from just like building?
Not really sure what legacy is anymore, right? Like how long does that last? What does that even mean? How many generations do you impact? Uh, you're forgotten, sooner than you think. I think some people say a few generations, 3 generations or whatever. Um, I don't, I don't care. I'm here right now, right? And I'm doing the best I can. And I want to make sure that I learn how to do better and better in the moment. And that will lead to everything that is going to come that I either want or don't know I want yet. And so I think we have a tendency to want to come up with things that help us make sense of the world and make sense of what we're doing and why we're doing it and where we're going when we really have no fucking clue. We don't know what we're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. They're all making it up, and we're all just doing our best to make it up, right? And with whatever construct we have, whether it's, actually, it doesn't really matter. It's just whatever we're dealing with, whatever's in our heads, whatever stories we're telling ourselves, like they're the ones that exist right now. And in the next moment, they might not matter. Like one way I'm working on living my life is with this idea in my head that it was all a dream. Whatever happened in the past, it was all a dream. So even whatever we just talked about 5 seconds ago, whatever you heard, I mean, it's recorded, so that's great. But like whatever you heard, whatever happened, it's gone. Whatever perspective I had, whatever synapses were hitting in my brain at that time, they don't exist anymore. They're gone, right? So does it matter? And whatever you were thinking based on what I said is gone now too. So it was all a dream. We hold on to the past so tightly, but do we hold on to a dream that tightly? No, it happened. It almost feels real, but did it really happen? It is how you remember it, the same as how I remember it. And if that's the case, then it was just all a dream in our own heads. Because whatever perspective you have, whatever you experience is not the same as what I experienced at all. Even if it was the same exact experience, even if you were sitting right next to me. You are not me, I am not you. And at the same time, like, we still experience these things, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of our conversation thus far has circled around the themes of sort of being in the moment and like skirting the normal constructs that society puts on us and just focusing on things that we have energy for and those kind of things. Are these new philosophies for you? Like, it sounds like they've developed and matured over time as people's philosophies do. What do you think's been most influential for you in getting to this current worldview? And how different is it than a previous worldview?
Yeah, I think more recently I'm just thinking about what do I actually want to believe? And how can I work on myself so that whatever stories I'm telling myself are as relevant to me right now as possible and aren't full of a lot of baggage from the past. And so a lot of the things that I'm thinking about are like, what are these things that I want to believe right now that I feel like are good for me? And I feel like are a little more long lasting than maybe things I believed in the past. So I take more time to come up with these things now.
What's driving this reflection?
I've always been pretty reflective. I think what drives it tends to be just my personality and wanting to improve, and then just change that happens in my life over time, right? Things change and you're not always aware of that. And then when you become aware of it, or there's like a massive big change, or as kind of, I think your friend pointed out to you, what was it, seasons of life?
Seasons of life.
Right? So like if there might be a seasonal change, I don't know, right? But yeah, there's probably a seasonal state change or a phase change or something where I feel like whatever, there's something about myself or a set of things that I kind of am looking to shed. Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Cool. I really like the idea of thinking about where you spend energy instead of where you spend time. Is that a daily sorting for you, a weekly sorting? Like, how do you decide when you want to do things? Like this chat, as an example, you said that you now felt like you had energy to do it. Was that like a this week thing as you think about your week, or like a today thing? Like, how do you?
I don't think about time.
Energy. How do you decide where?
So if it's not about time, it's not about this week. It's not about today. It's not about next week. It's just like looking at that email and be like, all right, let's do this. Let's do this now. Let's figure out when this is going to happen. Right. And that was it. And then it happened and scheduled, and we scheduled it last week or whatever. And here we are. Right. So it's more like letting the world happen, not forcing things, not pushing unnaturally. Right. And going with the seasons.
Yep.
And getting okay with that. Right. And I think that a lot of that is tough. It's tough because we want to control everything. And so a lot of it is like about control and not even worrying about the things I do control. right? That there's a whole saying of like, focus on the things you can control. Well, what if I don't have control over much at all? What if it's nothing? And all I can control is my energy for something, right? And then bringing myself to that place where like, if I'm doing something, it's just here and now, right? And it's not to say there's no planning. It's not to say there's no plans or execution. It's just more to say like, for me, myself and my own actions, like how can I focus on the energy I have for things and whether I have that energy or not the time I have. Because if I want to do something, I'll make the time for it. That's how every human being is. If they want to do something, they will make the time for it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about it, right? Just think about all the things that we do that are like, watching Netflix, watching TV, listening to podcasts, whatever it is, we make the time for it. Going to the gym. If we want it, we make the time for it. If we have energy for it, we make the time for it. If we believe it's good for us or believe that we really desire it, we'll figure it out. So I focus on the energy. I focus on being adaptable. I also focus on figuring out how in the moment I can bring the best of me to whatever situation, circumstance I'm dealing with. I think another aspect of this is like today, I all of a sudden figured out, oh fuck, it's like a Friday and I have 11 different meetings today. You're meeting number 3. And I just did a podcast with Stelly for almost an hour and a half.
Mm.
Right. And before that I had a customer interview. So I've been up for 2.5 hours already, actually almost 3 hours already. Right. It's only 8:30 where I'm at. And I'm going to go till easily 8:30 like today. So that's going to be a literally like a 15-hour day.
Do you find that draining going through all of those meetings? Like at the end of that day, are you zonked?
No, I'll be fine. It just happened.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, I know that's like one of your things. It was really fascinating. I mean, one of the reasons that I waited was like, do I really have a typical day? Do I need to share a typical day? That's an interesting question to start with. And so I would say that my typical day has changed recently. And as our businesses that I focus my energy on right now have evolved, there's a lot of split between roles and responsibilities between Marie and I. I've started to kind of get out more, and because we've been building for a long time, and now we're building some more stuff, and it'll be coming out soon. And I started to get out more and what I call make friends, right? Or remake or refriend people or whatever the process is, right? And so these days, my typical day is like, I'll wake up anywhere between 5:30 and 7:30. And then I'll usually spend a little bit of time at home, just getting ready for the day, whether it's meditating, going for a walk if I can, or hanging out with the kids before they go to school. They go to school at 8, roughly speaking, and then I'll usually head into a meeting. And sometimes I'll head into a meeting before that. And the meeting's usually in the city, in San Francisco, or it's a remote meeting, right? So we're a remote company, not even distributed. Marie and I don't work out of the same place at the moment. We did for a long time. So it's a very much like either I'm working from home most of the day, or I'm going to a bunch of meetings and then coming back home and working. So it's very much a work from home. I do also sometimes work from coffee shops. So I would say that if you were to ask me what my typical day looks like, there's not a lot of stability besides waking up in this 2-hour framing, and then getting at it pretty fast in terms of meetings. And then essentially whatever work I have to do that's non-meetings. And I do a mix of, maker and manager work every day. I don't have the whole block my whole day for just making very often. Maybe I do that like once or twice a month. Otherwise, it is scattered with calls and meetings.
What about evenings?
Evenings are usually, if I'm eating that day, because some days I'll just fast most of the day, I'll eat with the family typically, sometimes with a friend sometimes, and so it's family or friend, and then usually I'll end the meal and then spend a little bit of time doing equivalent of as close to nothing as possible, or spending a little bit of time meditating, and then I'll either go back to work or I'll go to sleep.
Sounds like you have some morning routines, waking up at, consistent-ish time, meditating, going for a walk, spending time with your kids before work. Do you have other consistent routines or habits that you do in a typical day?
Um, Not really. No, I don't think I have anything consistent that I do. I'm trying to think. No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty like inconsistent in terms of what kind of meetings, who I'm meeting with, whether it's customers or people inside the team. There's like consistent, obviously, like meetings, like 2 or 3 that happen every week, but that's kind of standard, you know. And there's a lot of content and marketing stuff that I tend to do in product work.
How do you
Also,
make time for family outside of all that? You're married, you have 2 kids. Where does that
yeah,
fit?
I spend as much time on the weekends with them as possible, and then I'm home quite a bit these days, so I spend time with them in between the day. Yeah,
What
when
about
I
hobbies?
my hobbies, I don't really have any like things that most people would call hobbies. Someone asked me that the other day and at a dinner, and I said, well, my hobbies are thinking about other people's businesses.
Nice. Um, something I've noticed about how you respond, sorry, something I've noticed is that you respond to some high percentage of emails in a very short amount of time, like sub 30 minutes over the years.
Yep.
Is that part of your some Hiten Shah email strategy, or is that just how you operate?
If I'm in front of a computer, um, I have the ability to respond pretty fast. I think people tend to appreciate that. And if I can do it, I'll do it. So if I'm not responding fast, it means like something's occupying my energy. And so I can't respond fast. And that happens. But typically, if I'm in a good state of mind and not really like having to focus on something specific, not even at the moment, but like for days on end, which happens sometimes, I'll be able to respond pretty fast.
Are there other areas of your life that you extend that sort of instant response approach to?
Yeah, I think when somebody pings me, I try to deal with it as soon as possible. So I don't typically get inundated with Slack messages, but I do enjoy Slack and responding to people when they
Hmm.
ping me. Like I'm pretty on top of that most of the time. Like very pretty fast. Um, just because usually it's because I'm blocking somebody and they actually do need something from me.
I know that helping others and giving feedback is a big part of you and where you spend energy. I think that you've invested or advised over 120 companies now.
Yeah.
And obviously, your famous line is the Zig Ziglar quote, which I really love. You will get all that you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. It's your Twitter cover photo, it's in your email signature, it's in your newsletters all the time. How does that manifest in your day to day?
Um, I think a great part of life is, you know, how many people you can impact in a positive way. And so I think about that, you know, and I've already created my life in such a way where I can do that. I can um, spend my energy uh, on a regular basis, helping other people in one way or another. It's something I've done for a long time. It's something probably learned from my father growing up. So yeah, uh, maybe I do it to a fault. It's possible, and so I have some tuning to do. But ultimately, I think it's an important part of my life. I think it's an important part of life for many people. They get a lot out of helping other people. I definitely do, and so I just do my best to make sure I have energy for that. It's not even time, because like people ping me all the time, and you know they want to meet up or something, and like it's not that I don't have time to meet up, but if I can solve their problem via email, I think I'd rather do that. So I tend to find my ways to help people without making a huge onus on myself.
You said some of the spirit was gotten from your father.
Yeah, he runs free health camps around the world and even locally in the U.S. as well. And so Yeah, it's something I just watched him do growing up since I was about 12 when he started doing that, roughly speaking.
How do you think about the way in which you give feedback to founders? Like, I know a big part of what you do is always trying to be helpful and give advice to others. I know that I reached out to you personally 3 years ago when I started Hazel and asked for feedback. I was surprised by the amount of tough love in your feedback. The feedback was spot on. And I think that you and I had exchanged enough emails back and forth where I knew that it was coming from a place of care. But how do you think about how you approach giving feedback to founders? There's sort of like the radical candor approach. There's like the shit sandwich approach. Like, what's your model?
It's probably closer to radical candor, but I think the things I strive for are directness and honesty. That's mostly it, right? I value directness in people around me, and I value honesty, and so I think another way to think about it is there's these three things that I also value in some of the people closest to me, but it's like if they're communicating with me, I prefer that they're actually fast, because fast is important. So the three things that I value in communication are fast, honest, and direct.
Hmm.
I want all three from other people. So I try to do the same for the people that I'm looking to help out, or people that reach out that want help. Over time, I think so it's like fast, direct, and honest, or fast, honest, and direct, actually more accurately. Because you can be fast and honest, but not direct. And that's either a shit sandwich or something else, right? Or you can be fast and direct, but you're missing the honesty part, right? Like being honest with yourself, being honest with that person. And you can be honest and direct, but really slow, right? So fast, honest, direct is kind of the way I think about it. And I think I've gotten better over time at the sort of the overarching kind of point there, which is compassion,
Hmm.
and getting better at being compassionate about it. So compassion has to do with, is this person ready to hear it? Have you set it up so that they're open and ready to hear it? I think another one about compassion is, do they even want your fucking opinion? Because if they don't want your fucking opinion, don't give it. And I think that's something I have to learn about, right? And I have to get better at, right? I thought my value was the fact that I could help anybody. And for the longest time, I don't think that's my value.
What do you think is the big value now?
Just not even thinking about being valuable or being valuable to other people. I'm just going to live my life, right? And like, see what happens and not worry about being valuable or not valuable. Again, I think it goes back to don't take things personally. And it also goes back to the idea of like, not worrying about what other people think. And I probably spent a lot more time worrying about what other people think than I should have in the past.
Hmm. Sounds like compassion is something that's changed over time for you, bringing that into the fold of the fast, honest, and direct framework. What other fundamental ways of being have changed for you as you've gotten older? This is something I think about a lot as I'm moving through these seasons in life and starting to feel my age. I think you've got a few years on me. What other fundamental ways of being have changed as you've gotten older?
I think a lot's changed over time, and I'm not sure how much it matters. I think what matters is how you deal with the change, and more than what's changed. And so I would say if I were to give one thing about it is like, um, I, if I were to go back to my younger self, because that's another way to ask what you asked, I'd probably just say like, learn how to accept the change that's happening, regardless of whether you believe you have control or not.
Mm.
Just learn to accept it. Don't don't resist it. Let it unfold. You do have a lot of control over a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if change is happening and it involves other people, it's very likely that like you're not going to be able to do much about it, right? And I think another way to think about it is when there's change happening and I find myself trying to control the situation, I'm doing something wrong. Instead, I should be thinking about, is there any influence that I have? So I've gone from a model of control and wanting to control the things I can control, because I think you can make believe that you can control anything. And I've just gone to a place where it's like, this change is happening. There are changes that are happening. They're happening all the time. How do I influence them so they happen in the best way possible?
In your model of fast, direct, and honest, do you come across, I'm sure that you do, what percentage of founders do you come across that are too much in that control mindset where they're not receptive to the feedback that you're giving them?
But they're not receptive because either they didn't want it or they didn't ask for it.
How often does that
So
happen?
that's my fault, though. It shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen.
But
Because then I don't need to say it. If I know something that you should do, but you don't want to hear it, or you didn't ask me to tell you, why should I say it? Right? So like, instead, I think I'm more tactful there, where I might ask you a bunch of questions. And those questions will lead to whether you should hear what I have to say in the way I'm going to say it, or in some other way, or not hear it at all. I think I don't need to say anything. Right? And I think that's a learning for me. Just because I have something in my mind and I have an opinion doesn't mean I need to share it. We don't need to share our opinions.
Sounds like part of the learning has been learning to feel that out in those conversations as well. Because I mean, you're taking these meetings not knowing what's going on for the other person at the other end of the line. Is part of learning how to feel that out, and then sort of deciding in the moment whether you want to give that feedback, whether they're ready for it, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Building on all of the founders you help, you have a pretty solid circle of people you associate with, lots of influential people of interest. What's been your secret to building those connections?
Just being myself. I think you end up adding value to the world when you're yourself. You end up adding the value to the world when you don't think about adding value, right? And you're just literally doing what you do, right? I mean, you're talking about founders, so like, we're building things. The value is in what we're doing and what we're sharing about what we're doing in whatever ways resonate. And I think it's that simple. I think it doesn't have to be complicated.
How do you maintain those relationships? Something you mentioned earlier was refriending, which, said to me that some of these relationships can lapse, and especially if they're like remote people, like in Boston or wherever. How have you gone about or learned to best maintain those relationships?
I don't think about it. I don't think about it. I think maintenance is not really relevant. I think what's relevant is like realizing that you can just ask people for things and they can decide. So it's about not taking things personally. So once I realize that like I probably take things too personally and I want to adjust that, it didn't matter anymore, right? It isn't about maintenance. It isn't about any of that. It's just like more about like, when you need something, ask somebody. And if they need something, they should know they can ask you, and it's on them, right? And if you reach out to somebody because you want to help them because you see something or you're thinking of them. So I think it's more going with certain impulses about people, right? Like if I think of someone, I'll ping them, be like, yo, thinking of you, what's going on? Just want to say hi. Hey, or whatever, right? And that's okay.
So it's more go with the flow approach than like systems or structures. It sounds like go with the flow is sort of like your general approach.
I think go with the flow.
Go with the energy.
When it comes to life, go with the energy. Focus on whether you have energy for it and how it makes you feel. And don't spend so much time thinking too deliberately about your relationships and other people. Think more about yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a way of like whether it's what contributions am I providing to the world, or what do I want? What do I need? Instead of worrying so much about other people and what their needs are. And when you need to come together and do things together, then it's a natural flow to figure out like how to work together or how to find the right balance, so to speak. And remember, change is constant.
All right. Cool, man. I really appreciate the time. That was fun. Lots of good lessons on life, which I think was what we're going for. Less of the tactical and more of the philosophical, which is always fun. Yeah, appreciate the time.
Sounds good. Thanks for the call, and I think it's super interesting what you're doing. So it's always nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Hiten. Appreciate that. All right,
See ya.
man. Bye.